I just wanted to make a quick video to talk to you about your analysis essays that you will be working on this week. In reviewing a couple of drafts that people have turned in, there are some things that I noticed that are in common, and also in reviewing your worksheet that you turned in this past Sunday and looking at the thesis statements, I realized that some of us may be a little bit misdirected in terms of what the ultimate goal of this assignment is. But what I first want to talk about a little bit is your introduction paragraphs, okay? I like to use the image of an inverted or upside down triangle or pyramid or whatever in order to talk about what an introduction paragraph is. So, an introduction paragraph is starting broad and increasingly getting more narrow until you get down to the point. The point of your essay, of course, is the thesis statement. So when I talk about starting broad, what I'm talking about is general ideas, open sentences, questions, anything that's going to engage the reader. Of course, you're familiar with things like starting with a question or starting with a statistic or just a general fact or a general idea, something that's a little bit more open that more people can identify with. Now, the middle of the introduction paragraph is where you get increasingly more specific. You don't jump right into the topic of your paper, but you start to indicate where the paper is going. So getting a little bit more specific, referencing something for this particular paper, referencing something about advertisements, or referencing something about the concept or the theme or the idea or the message that is presented in the advertisement. And then the last sentence in your introduction should be your thesis statement, which is the point, right? That's why it's at the bottom where the triangle meets, right? The point of your paper. Speaking about the intro or the thesis statement specifically, because I noticed when looking at the work that you turned in on this past Sunday, a lot of the thesis statements were really misdirected in terms of talking about the product itself, talking about the issue itself. But you have to keep in mind that the goal of this essay is to analyze the effectiveness of the advertisement. So 3 things that your thesis statement should do. 1, you should loosely reference or specifically identify the advertisement or advertisements if you're writing about 2. I know that the easy thing in your mind is to just write about 1, but you may find that you don't have 2 pages worth of things to write about the 1, or it will help enhance the quality of your paper if you add a supplemental text, right? So when I say loosely or specifically identify, loosely, these advertisements, if you've already introduced them, specifically the Skittles commercial. So just basically make sure that you tell the reader what you're writing about. Also, in your thesis statement, you want to give the points of analysis. Ultimately, what is it that you are going to use in order to support the argument that you're building in this paper? Is it the imagery that is presented in a print ad? Is it the storyline in the commercial? The words that appear on the screen or in the magazine? The overall themes? And don't forget about the information that we talked about last week with those appeals, right? The pathos, the ethos, the logos. What is it that is used to entice the viewer, consumer, audience, whomever, in terms of doing whatever it is that the advertisement wants you to do, whether it's buy a product, support a cause, donate money, whatever the case may be. And then the last thing for your thesis statement is to state your argument. This is an argumentative paper because ultimately you are going to argue whether or not this ad is effective at achieving whatever goal. All right, so you want to make sure that you identify that. With all of that, of course, your thesis statement is going to be a lot longer than with your memoir essay because it has a lot of information in it. So again, you know that a long sentence doesn't equal a run-on if it's properly punctuated. There's nothing wrong with a long sentence, but you don't want to be unnecessarily wordy. Try to keep it as concise as possible. I'll give you an example that includes all of those elements. And if you notice right here, that example it's not a really long sentence, but it says the 2018 Budweiser Super Bowl commercial effectively appeals to consumers' emotions by reminding viewers that beer can soothe the stresses of life. That's bad advice, but a good sentence, okay? So the whole idea is it specifically mentions the ad. the point of analysis. It appeals to emotion. And what is the argument? It's effective because it shows you that if you're having a hard day, you should have a beer. You should not, but that's what that sentence says. Now, the other things I want to say or remind you is about the organization. No, you do not have to do an outline, right? You don't have to do that. Although I do encourage you to do an outline, even if it's just an informal sketch, right? Bullet points. Doesn't have to be formalized with Roman numerals and letters and things like that, but it's an easy way to make sure that you're on track. So if we look at this example, the outline, Roman numeral 1, that's the introduction. Everyone's second paragraph / first body paragraph should be a description of the advertisement. You cannot jump into the analysis if the reader doesn't first know what it is that you are analyzing. So you want to make sure that you give a really detailed description of the commercial or the print ad. And then you move into your points of analysis. So I used this thesis statement. So to build this, yours, depending on what you're writing about, you would have more paragraphs, it would be longer, it would be situated differently. But here, focusing on the emotional appeals. As such, the major supporting details, a relatable storyline, the use of animals to evoke a particular emotion, and then also the way that the product is presented as a solution to an everyday problem. So all of those things are relatable, thereby, enticing folks to support the company, buy the product, etc., etc. And then, of course, your last paragraph is the conclusion, where you tie all of your ideas together. Couple of things I want to remind you, this essay is objective, right? With your memoir essay, of course, you talked about yourself. You had to use personal pronouns because you were talking about yourself. This one, you should remain objective in tone. It doesn't matter if the commercial made you laugh. You don't need to tell me that. So you might say the commercial uses humor in order to engage the audience or in order to appeal to the audience or whatever the case may be. But you don't need to say, when I saw this commercial, I laughed. Don't put yourself in the paper at all. You want to remain objective, like I already said, avoiding using those first person personal pronouns. Instead, you want to talk about consumers, audience members, viewers, customers, buyers, people, any noun besides I. Also, you want to make sure that each body paragraph is focused, it's descriptive, or it's analysis. It's not just commentary. You don't want to take your paper and digress and write a whole paragraph about why beer is not the solution to life's problems. You might feel that way, and that's awesome. But your goal is to analyze how this advertisement uses that concept in order to convince people who are sitting at home watching the commercial during the Super Bowl that this is the thing that they need to do, okay? So don't digress and focus on things that are actually not part of this assignment. If you're analyzing a smoking commercial or a cigarette commercial, then you want to, even though you might feel, and I agree, you should not smoke cigarettes, but that's not the point of your paper. If it's a really well, for example, the commercial that I posted and explained last week, that was a really well done Camel cigarette commercial, right? It hit all of the appeals, logic, emotion, ethics, in terms of trying to get folks to see that they should smoke Camel cigarettes. Horrible message, well done commercial. So keep that in mind. All right, and then the other thing, again, which I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit there with number 3 on the screen, the overall goal of the essay is to discuss the quality of the ad, not the product, not the message, but the actual quality of the advertisement. Now, this is posted on Moodle in a separate file from the folder a week or so ago, but I just want to point it out here as well, because you see this advertisement, it's pretty plain, nothing special about it at first glance, but it is an advertisement for these shoes that the young lady is wearing. Now, the full paper is on the course Moodle page, but I pulled excerpts here because I want to show you what I mean with some of these reminders that I've given you today. And I'm not going to read through this whole paper. That's your job. It's on Moodle. Please do so. But notice in the introduction, it starts out, as young women, we have always been told through the medium of advertisement that we must use certain products to make ourselves beautiful. For decades, ads for things like soap, makeup, and mouthwash have established a sort of misplaced control over our lives, telling us what will make us attractive and what will not. Recently, however, a new generation of advertisement has emerged in the fashion industry, one that cleverly equates the products shown in the ads with the quest for confident individuality. Notice, if we think back to that inverted triangle, this writer started with a really broad concept, women in advertisements, and then increasingly gets more and more specific in terms of the ultimate goal of her paper. Then she gets into her thesis statement. If we look at this, it does seem to be a rather lengthy sentence, but I want you to notice how all of the necessary parts are present. Ads such as the two for Clarkson Surreal discussed below encourage us to break free from the standard beauty mold and be ourselves. Using mostly imagery, they remind us that being unique is the true origin of beauty. So there, she mentions the ads. She talks about her points of analysis, imagery. They're just pictures, very few words. If you go to the full file on Moodle, you'll see that there are two instead of the one that I pulled here. And then her argument, right? And even though she doesn't specifically use the terms, you can see that this is an argument that's based on feelings. It should make women feel confident that their version of beauty is acceptable as opposed to, a generalized society version. So that's what I mean by a well-developed, specific introduction that gets down to the point without digressing to talk about all sorts of unrelated things. Now, the other part for the essay, notice I say introduction, then describe. And if you do more than, or if you focus on more than one ad, you would just do that in rotation. So introduction, description, analysis, and the conclusion where you put them all together. So notice here, and I'm going to just look at a little bit of this. In the middle of the paragraph, I'm just going to, first, the first ad promotes Clark's fashion as band geek chic, quite literally raising a unique personality onto a pedestal with the subject poised on a decorative stone platform as shown in figure 1. Then she goes on to say, she is wearing her hair in a French twist with a strand tucked behind her ear, as if she recently moved it out of her face to play the music she loves without distraction. The downturn of her nose points to the short gray-black dress that stops several inches above her knees but covers her chest and shoulders modestly. She goes on to say her right knee is bent while her left knee remains straight. I say all that to say, right, that she describes everything except the shadow in that picture. Okay, so you want to write with the idea in mind that the person reading your paper can't see the ad for themselves. I know that you posted the ads already and I can see them, but we are focusing on enhancing our descriptive writing skills. And then notice that the description is quite a bit longer than the analysis paragraph, because the description is all fact. Analysis is where you just tie together, talk about what's going on in the picture and what does it mean. So she says, Clark's has taken what looks like your average high school student and dressed her in an outfit that speaks to her own distinctive character and talents. The image sparks the idea that her beauty comes from an internal base of secure self-confidence and moves outward to infuse her physical appearance and sense of style. This ad urges us to celebrate individuality with the right look. Using an image alone, Clark's advertises its products with the simple promise that they will support you in doing what you love and keep you original. Okay, so I say all that to say, again, this is just a quick reminder, well, maybe not so quick, but a reminder of what it is that you're doing as you continue to work on these papers. And my concern is that we have gotten off base a little bit and digressed quite a bit with what I've seen thus far. So if you have any specific questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Your papers are not going to be due until this Sunday. Keep in mind, you can posting a draft is optional. But trust me, you should take advantage of that option. You can post a draft up until the 15th so that I can give you feedback that you can fine tune by the 18th, which is when your paper is due. Again, let me know if you have any questions and I will Talk to you guys later.